200 years ago, a revolution began, not with gunpowder or declarations, but with coal, steam and iron. Behind me stands the Skirn Bridge, one of the oldest railway bridges still in use today. For nearly 2 centuries, its stone arches have carried countless trains, bearing witness to the dawn of the railway age. This unassuming structure is more than just a bridge. It's a monument to a pivotal moment when the North East transformed from a patchwork of rural communities and coal mines into the engine room of the modern industrial world. But why here? Why the North East? What made this rugged, often harsh landscape the crucible for a revolution in transport, industry and society? This is Rails and Revolutions, the history that built us and the forces that shaped us. The story of the railways in the North East is one of convergence, where land, labour and innovation met in a rare alignment of opportunity and necessity. Long before the first steam whistle blew, this region was already groaning beneath the weight of its own wealth. Its vast coal seams, stretching deep beneath the soils of Durham and Northumberland, the great northern coalfield powered hearths, factories and ships, the very fires of the British Empire. The rivers Tyne and Tees allowed coal to be shipped to London and beyond, but the terrain itself, steep hills, deep valleys, and scattered communities made traditional transport like carts or canals difficult. And so a new kind of solution was needed. The very shape of the land posed the problem, and paradoxically held the key. Alongside the natural resources came an equally important force: people. The North East was home to a concentration of skilled engineers, colliery workers and mechanical tinkerers, including Quaker industrialists, whose progressive beliefs often encouraged investment in public infrastructure and social reform. Miners laboured day after day beneath dull, rain-heavy skies, loading chaldron wagons at the pit heads. These wagons, large wooden containers, were pulled by horses over rutted tracks, through muddy lanes and across uneven terrain. Timber wagonways, known locally as Newcastle roads, offered some relief. These crude wooden railways allowed horses to pull heavier loads more smoothly than on dirt tracks. But as mining pushed deeper inland, even these wagonways reached their limits. The coal had to be moved faster, more efficiently to keep pace with a growing empire hungry for fuel. Canals were proposed, grand schemes in 1767 and again in 1815, to carry coal from inland pits to rivers and ports, but the rugged northeast terrain rendered these plans impractical. The time had come for something new, something bold. In 1818, a group of Quaker businessmen in Darlington saw opportunity where others saw only difficulty. Led by Edward Pease, they dreamed of connecting the collieries of Italy and Witton directly to the River Tees. But rather than canals, they envisaged a public railway, a line of iron rails that could carry wagons far heavier than horses could pull. Initially, their plan was modest: a horse-drawn wagonway, but Pease and his collaborators soon aimed higher. They secured an Act of Parliament in 1821 to build the Stockton and Darlington Railway, the first railway open to any suitable wagon owner for a toll, an egalitarian vision wrapped in industrial innovation, a line not just for wealthy landowners or companies, but for common working people. This is the 4th Street Works in Newcastle, the world's first purpose-built locomotive factory. It was here that George Stephenson turned vision into industry, laying the mechanical foundations of the railway age. Stephenson, a self-taught colliery engineer from nearby Wylam, known today as the father of railways, brought with him not just technical expertise, but an unshakable belief in steam power. At Killingworth Colliery, he built early locomotives like the Blucher, capable of hauling heavy loads on iron rails. His reputation soon reached the backers of the Stockton and Darlington Railway, and in 1822 he was appointed chief engineer. Stephenson surveyed the entire route himself and proposed using wrought iron rails in place of brittle cast iron tram plates. Most importantly, he convinced the company to embrace steam locomotion, a bold move at a time when horsepower still reigned supreme. Here at the 4th Street Locomotive Works, which he established in 1823 alongside his son Robert and a team of skilled engineers, Stephenson refined his locomotive designs. Multi-tubular boilers, direct drive pistons, and standardized components made them more powerful and efficient than anything the world had seen. But it wasn't just about the engines. Stephenson's railways were engineered with precision, solid foundations, measured gradients, and durable materials that laid the groundwork for how railways would be built everywhere. At the same time, in Shildon, Timothy Hackworth, a skilled blacksmith, engineer and deeply religious man, was forging a different but equally vital path. Hackworth, once superintendent of the Wylam Wagonway, had worked closely with steam engines and understood the demands of daily operation. Hackworth's innovations focused on safety and efficiency. He refined the use of the blast pipe, which expelled exhaust steam through the chimney to draw air through the firebox, boosting combustion and steam production. His locomotives like Royal George and Sans Pareil were praised for their durability, power and practical design. Hackworth also pioneered regular maintenance schedules, better crew training and simplified engine construction for ease of use and repair. While Stephenson imagined what could be built, Hackworth ensured what was built could work, day after day, mile after mile. At 7 a.m, locomotion number 1, built at the 4th Street Works in Newcastle, hauled the coach experiment and a train of coal wagons and passengers along the new railway line. Though horses still pulled some wagons on steep sections, reaching over 10 miles per hour, a startling sight in an age dominated by horse-drawn transport. Farmers, weavers, children, and townsfolk along the 8.5-mile route between Stockton and Darlington stopped to watch, astonished by the sight and sound of fire and iron moving with power and purpose. By late morning, the train rolled into Darlington, where some 10,000 people had gathered to witness this industrial marvel. Coal and passengers were moving together, propelled by steam, an invention destined to reshape the world. Shildon, once a quiet village, transformed almost overnight into New Shildon, a busy railway town with engine sheds, foundries, smithies and brick houses springing up alongside the tracks. The steady rhythms of rural life gave way to the pulse of steam power. Darlington too thrived. Its carriage works and engineering firms positioned the town at the heart of Britain's railway industry. And Newcastle saw change on a grand scale. Stephenson's 4th Street Works became the world's first locomotive factory, producing engines destined for railways far beyond the northeast. Further downstream, Middlesbrough, once just a small farm on the banks of the Tees, exploded into a railway-born boomtown. The railway's arrival in 1830 via a branch from the Stockton and Darlington line transformed the landscape almost overnight. The coal it carried attracted ironmasters and entrepreneurs who saw the town's riverside location as ideal for industry. Within a few short years, blast furnaces were built, ironworks lit the skyline, and the population surged from under 40 people in 1829 to over 5,400 by 1841. By the 1850s, Middlesbrough was dubbed Ironopolis, the beating heart of Britain's iron and steel industry. Its rapid growth, powered entirely by the flow of coal and capital brought by the railways. The docks expanded, linked by rail to collieries and quarries across the region. The town also became a centre for steel production, playing a key role in shipbuilding, armaments, and global infrastructure projects. A town born in the age of steam, Middlesbrough became a symbol of railway-driven transformation. A new town for a new industrial world. After the success of the Stockton and Darlington line, he and Robert built the Rocket, winner of the Rainhill Trials in 1829 and a defining design for steam locomotion. His work sped far beyond the northeast, becoming the blueprint for Britain's and later the world's rail networks. The railway revolution redefined work and community. Thousands found new livelihoods laying tracks, forging parts and driving engines. Whole families became railway people, shifting from farming or mining into fitting, engineering and railway trades. Housing estates, schools, chapels and shops grew up alongside the lines. Towns and villages reshaped themselves around sheds, sidings and stations. Lives were rebuilt, not in stone alone, but in steel and steam. Yet the change came at a cost. The speed and scale of industrial upheaval left casualties in its wake. Canal boatmen, carters and traditional tradesmen lost livelihoods as old transport routes withered. Some communities prospered wildly, while others faded. Still, from this upheaval, a new identity emerged, one marked by grit, pride and progress. Perhaps the greatest gift of the railway was something beyond economics. It gave ordinary people extraordinary freedom, the ability to travel further and faster than ever before. Working families could now visit markets, relatives, or take holidays by the seaside. Fresh food arrived sooner. Newspapers spread news across the land in hours instead of days. The world grew smaller and people felt closer to it. By the mid-19th century, the North East was no longer simply the coal face of Britain. It was the engine room of the modern industrial world. Its viaducts, sheds, bridges and lines, many still standing and in use today, are monuments not just to engineering prowesses, but to endurance, vision and the labour of generations. So, as you stand watching the Skerne Bridge, or watching a train roll into Darlington Station, you are tracing the tracks of a revolution, one that did not begin with kings or battles, but with miners, mechanics, and visionaries who dared to move the world forward, 1 mile of rail at a time. What stories do you carry with you about railways or industry? How has this legacy touched your own life or community? If you believe these stories matter, the ones held in steel, in stone, in silence, help keep them alive. Like the video, share it with someone who's crossed that arch or stood beneath it and felt something stir. Subscribe for more stories from the places that shaped us. Because heritage isn't just about preserving the past. It's about understanding and how we carry it forward. And if there's a bridge, a street, or a forgotten corner of the North East you think we should explore, please let us know in the comments. The story of this region isn't over. It's still being written, one voice, one place, one memory at a time.